Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
No matter who wins the MVP, Josh Allen can show why he is better than Lamar Jackson on Sunday. Also, the Eagles must prove they can challenge for the NFC crown, and championship hopes in the NFL begin and end with an elite quarterback. It's a football Friday. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
It's hard to remember a divisional round game with more on the line with two fan bases and two quarterbacks than Bills-Ravens this weekend. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, the two MVP frontrunners. We still don't know who the MVP is going to be. This discussion is not going to be about that. Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. I don't want you to worry about that, but I do want to ask you the same question, Joe, that I asked Kevin Ostreicher yesterday. After all of the playoff heartbreak that this Bills fandom and this particular iteration of the Bills team has had over the last handful of seasons, why is this year going to be different?
Well, I wish I had a straight answer for you. I think there's a lot to like about the makeup of this Bills team. They feel like a group that's really cohesive, that plays for one another. There's not a lot of ego in this locker room at all. It's a very bought-in group, and I think that's pretty exciting. Obviously, Josh Allen's playing his best football of his career, playing very efficient, not turning over the ball. I think that matters a ton. It's certainly the best rushing offense that they've had yet under Sean McDermott and Josh Allen. And all of that's great. But the problem for the Bills in their playoff elimination games, 4 years in a row, they've gotten bounced by either Mahomes 3 times or Burrow once. It's been the defense. Can the defense figure it out? And I'm concerned, Peter. You know, I think that the Baltimore Ravens are a bad matchup for every team. I think they're probably the worst matchup possible for Buffalo based on their desire to play with light personnel on the defensive side of the football. They're not really a team that matches personnel. And so they're going to need the game script to go a certain way. And if Baltimore gets a lead, that's going to be really tough for Buffalo to overcome. So the issue's been the defense. I remain concerned about the defense. And honestly, this is probably the worst defense yet under Sean McDermott. So for as much as Josh Allen is playing his best, as much as the rushing offense looks really good, and that matters in playoff football, the problem's been the defense, and I think this is the worst regular season defense we've seen yet for the Bills.
Yeah, and if you're going to make the Josh Allen MVP case, that's part of it, right? That he has had to carry this team for long stretches this year without elite pass catchers around him. What is it about Josh Allen this year? What has he leveled up, to your mind, that has allowed him to play at such a top-tier level?
Well, I think Joe Brady gets a lot of credit for that, coming in and really developing the run scheme, developing the passing offense around Josh. But I'll call it like I see it. The biggest thing is they don't have Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs gave this Buffalo Bills team the greatest 4-year stretch of receiving production that it's ever seen and probably ever will. But the Bills offense is better because he's no longer part of it. Not because he's not a great player. He's an awesome player. But because Josh Allen has the freedom to execute. It's no longer wondering if 14 is going to be happy or if he's going to get his targets. Josh just reads the defense, goes to the smart right place with the football and makes plays. I'll double down. Gabe Davis no longer being a part of it matters a lot. Everybody was so excited about Gabe Davis after that big touchdown, 4-touchdown game against Kansas City in the divisional round, and had this belief that he's an actual number 2 receiver. He's not. And they spent 2 years trying to validate it. And he's not that type of player. He doesn't have the type of skill set. He doesn't separate. He's not a yards after catch guy. And when you're feeding volume to that type of player, it hurts your offense. So they're better because they've changed the dynamics of the supporting cast around Josh Allen that's allowed him to play cleaner, free football.
They've also allowed him on 3rd and 4 to say, hey, Josh, we're just like, here's this creative group of runs that we're going to use you on. I was struck watching them against Denver. There was a drive where I think on 3 or 4, either 3rd or 4th downs, they just said, Josh Allen, go make a play. It was a designed quarterback run. And when you're 6'5", 240, you can do that in the playoffs, whereas in the regular season, you don't want to live in that world. But that just seems to be even this extra playoff gear that they can get to.
Yeah, that's a big part of playoff Josh Allen is they do unleash that type of stuff. They don't do a lot of design runs at all for Josh outside of the quarterback sneaks during the season. This is when that starts to be incorporated into the offense. And what's exciting about that this year is their edge blockers, not their offensive line. Offensive line is really good, but what they have in this sixth offensive lineman in Alec Anderson, they play that player 20-25%. Yeah. Mac Hollins is a big blocking receiver. Reggie Gilliam as a fullback, Dawson Knox as a blocking tight end. They get all that going on the edges with Josh Allen. And yeah, good luck on, short yardage situations when you need to stop.
Yeah, it seems like third and anything less than 5 or 6, you're in trouble. And even maybe like 3rd and 8, because he can pick those yards up with his legs. You mentioned the defense. We have to hit on that once more because these two teams played already once. And this Bills defense could not stop Baltimore even a little bit. What might be different this time that would allow them to at least make this a game where Josh Allen can go out and win 31-28 as opposed to giving up, 35 points?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of personnel differences compared to that game back in September, week 4. They scored 35 points, moved the ball at will, but the Bills didn't have either of their starting linebackers, Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano. Terrell Bernard's team captain. Matt Milano's an all-pro linebacker. They're leaning into Balin Spector and Dorian Williams. When they went 3 linebackers, which they did 28% of the time, it was Nick Moreau. Those aren't real options, right? Those aren't real players like Milano and Bernard, not to mention Taron Johnson, an all-pro slot corner. They didn't have him either. So your entire second level of your defense didn't exist, not to mention Taylor Rapp, a starting safety. He was concussed after 16 plays. Our rookie, Cole Bishop, got his first real extended action in that game, having to play 41 snaps against Baltimore. That's going to be a lot different where they have their defense healthy. And Matt Milano's starting to look like Matt Milano. I think that's a big reason why you would have some optimism that the defensive performance could be better this time.
You can stay up to date all year on the Buffalo Bills by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On Bills on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. You're Locked On Sports today on a football Friday. Coming up, the Eagles have some work to do this weekend. Before we get to that, we'll answer some questions about whether or not the Texans should even show up against the number 1 seed Kansas City Chiefs. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add a little bit of juice to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. It's going to be a scoring barrage in Detroit on Saturday night. FanDuel has the total for the Commanders-Lions game set at, oh my goodness, 55.5. That's a Big 12 line. Holy cow, 55.5. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The Texans need to win in the trenches to have a prayer of beating the Chiefs on Saturday.
One of the pathways to victory to me is if that O-line can protect CJ and give him enough time to have CJ Stroud needs to have his coming out party. And we've seen how good he was, how he had a great rookie season. Was statistically, he may not have been, playing this season like everybody wanted him to be. And I know they call it the sophomore slump, but you could just see little signs of him getting better every week. And then, that last week against the Los Angeles Chargers, it was almost like that one play that everybody has been talking about where the muffed snap, and next thing you know, he picks it up, runs to the sideline, and finds Xavier Hutchinson in the middle of the field for 34.
That's a huge play.
Yeah, 34 yards. And then CJ started to use his legs a little bit more. You could almost see him get his swagger back. And so this game, going up against, arguably one of the top 5 to 7 quarterbacks to ever play this game in Patrick Mahomes, going up against a great mind like Andy Reid, going up against Spagnuolo, right? Did I say that
Spagnuolo.
Right? Yeah. So going up against his brilliant defensive mind. This is a game where CJ can have his coming out party in the playoffs and show the rest of the world he's ready to take that next step.
The Commanders need 3 things to go well if they're going to upset the Lions.
Those 3 things this week: no more than 60% of the Lions drives can produce touchdowns. And even 60% is iffy, right? Even 60%, you're kind of on the cusp. And this is where I'm putting myself at risk because the Lions could get 60% touchdowns on 60% of their drives, do these other two things and potentially still win because they're that good of a team. But I went back through and I looked at their losses. I looked at the close games that they had, the one-score margin of victories that the Lions had. And that pretty much seems to be the sweet spot. If you let them score, if they get say 5 scoring possessions and 3 of them are touchdowns, you're probably going to lose. But if you can get that to 2 out of 5 or 3 out of 6 or 2 out of 4, whatever it is, then you have a better shot. So that's a big one. Gibbs and Montgomery, obviously massive parts of this game. What you can't do is let them take over the game. The Washington Commanders did a very good job against Bucky Irving and Rachaad White last week against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think that's a good warm-up for this group. I really like Rachaad. I really like Bucky. I think Gibbs and Montgomery are just better. The line is probably a little bit better, so at least specifically in some spots. Tristan Wirfs is all-pro left tackle, but I think it's not a copy-paste. You can't just defend the Bucs run game and then copy-paste it to the Lions. But if you can prevent Gibbs and Montgomery from just fully taking over, then that'll give you a fighting chance. And then you have to get the Commanders' ground game going besides Jane Daniels. That's something that's been missing. Brian Robinson has not been the same in really over like the last month.
And knowing the Bills side of the game, the main key for the Ravens win comes down to converting in key situations.
I think being able to convert at a high level for the Ravens. This has been a team that when you look at their conversion rates, and this has been a storyline throughout the entire season for them, they're one of the best third down offenses in the league and the best red zone offense. They converted nearly 75% of their red zone opportunities when it comes down to that. So in games like this, and I expect this one to be close, probably a little more high scoring than the Pittsburgh game. And, obviously both the Ravens and Bills were able to put it to the Steelers and Broncos defenses, respectively. I just feel like red zone opportunities are going to be so huge. And that, honestly, the defensive side of the ball, too. The Ravens on the defensive side of the ball, red zone-wise, they've been okay. They're 12th. And when you look at Buffalo's red zone percentage on offense, they're right behind Baltimore. They're number 2. So these are 2 high-powered red zone offenses, and it might just come down to which team is able to tighten up inside the 20 and force the opposing offense to kick field goals. With 2 field goal kickers I know, Joe, who have had some up and downs this season. Justin Tucker, luckily for Baltimore side of things, has turned it around since the bye week, but obviously it was a very rocky stretch for him before. So if it comes down to a final kick, whichever fan base it is, I'm sure it's going to be sweating, thinking about what's going to happen here because of all the volatility we've seen from both those guys this year.
The Philadelphia Eagles took care of business against the Green Bay Packers on Sunday. Then on Monday, the LA Rams stunned the Minnesota Vikings to set up a 2-4 matchup in the NFC playoffs. Louis DiBiase from Locked On Eagles joins me now. And Lou, this is going to be a narrative game, to be sure. The Rams with their playoff experience, with, of course, the tragedy in LA with the wildfires, creating a groundswell of support for them. But you still got to play a football game. 131 yards passing from Jalen Hurts against the Packers. What is your concern level with this offense right now, even given all the weapons they have?
Yeah, as the offense as a whole, I'm not overly concerned with, because I thought the run game was as successful against Green Bay as it's been all year, and I think that's going to continue to be the blueprint against the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday. The passing game, though, yeah, it was as inconsistent as ever. I think it was a far too conservative game plan from Kellen Moore. Jalen Hurts was definitely rusty. I don't think he handled pressure all that well, but at the same time, Jalen, I think, has earned the right this year and from the last 3 years of a sample size to not be handcuffed the way he was. I think there's a middle ground between not being a 30, 35-plus passing attempt team, but at the same time, not doing what you did on Sunday. I think there is a middle ground, and I think they will bounce back against L.A.
To your point about the running game, the last time these two teams met in the regular season, the Eagles won 37-20. Do you remember how many yards Saquon Barkley had in that game, Lou?
255 rushing, I believe.
On 26 carries, so almost 10 yards a pop against this Rams defense. So if that's going to be the formula, I think that's going to work. On the other hand, we saw this Rams defense absolutely destroy Sam Darnold on Monday night. And this was a Eagles offensive line that did not play its best game against the Packers, that saw Jalen Hurts have to leave the pocket and try and extend and make plays. That's how you disrupt this passing game. So what can the Eagles do other than just, run Saquon 30 times in this game to help Jalen Hurts and this passing game?
Yeah, what I'd like to see Kellen Moore do is get Jalen Hurts under center more, get him on a moving pocket, play action rollouts. I feel like after the bye week when the Eagles started to get hot on offense, passing the football as well as running the football, Jalen Hurts is playing more under center. That's something, Jalen's used to playing in the shotgun. I think that's normally how they utilize his strengths, but I think that kind of tapped into a different kind of production from this offense. So I think that's something they can do in the quick passing game, Peter. Like, they have to get the ball out of Jalen's hands a lot quicker than on Sunday. Use the middle of the field, just things I think they were kind of ignoring against Green Bay. So I think there's ways to counter what the Rams do up front, but that is one of the most, I think, underrated young pass rushes in football, and they showed that against Minnesota.
Yeah, Jared Verse, Kobe Turner, I mean, they were outstanding in that part of the game. But we cannot gloss over this Philadelphia Eagles defense. This was the best defense in the league really all season. Some similarities in styles between these two teams, but the Eagles played the best version of this defense right now going in the NFL. On the other hand, Matthew Stafford has seen every version of every defense, basically. They scored 27 last week against a very good Minnesota Vikings defense in their own right. Can the Eagles defense keep this going against Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, Puka Nacua, and all their buddies?
Yeah, I think they can. And what's good is a lot of the Rams' strengths, the Eagles have an elite counter to attack that. Of course, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, one of the best wide receiver duos in football. What do the Eagles have on the other side? I think the best corner trio in football. And Quinyon Mitchell, Darius Slay, Cooper DeJean, who I thought all had a successful, incredible game against the Packers. So to me, I think they can keep this up. Unfortunate for you, Peter. But I think the only matchup I'm a little bit nervous about with Nakobe Dean out for the year, it's either going to be rookie linebacker Jeremiah Trotter Jr. starting or Oren Burks. That's a backup linebacker I'm a little bit nervous that Sean McVay can try to pick on. Let's see if Vic Fangio can hide that guy in coverage. Are they going to use more dime looks? That's the one matchup I'm like, okay, can they kind of hide that player against McVay and Stafford? It's going to be a fun chess match for sure.
You can stay up to date all year on the Philadelphia Eagles by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Eagles on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, roster building in the NFL is all about the quarterback. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. When my wife and I go out, we have 2 young kids. It is an event. We want to make sure we're getting the best bang for our buck, and we don't want anything. We don't want anything making it worse. And sometimes ticket buying can make it worse. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Team building in the NFL is pretty simple. Get a good quarterback and the rest will figure itself out. But is quarterback being overvalued? Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson discuss why they'd rather have an elite quarterback and an okay roster instead of an elite roster with an okay quarterback.
It makes me wonder if teams should, if the quarterback position is so important that if you don't have one of those top 4 or 5 guys, that you should just keep trying to get one of the top 4 or 5 guys and almost nothing else matters. Is everyone else just playing for the middle?
I lean towards yes. Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's kind of like baseball. That I remember when Albert Bell and Jim Tomei or whatever, like they all hit at the same time for the Indians and then they were good. But they were a small market team. Like they drafted them all at the same time. They all got good at the same time and then they left. Like I still think you can do that. Like, boy, the stars align and everybody's good at the same time and you don't have a quarterback and you can knock off Mahomes, blah, blah, blah. Mahomes has only lost to 2 guys, though, in the postseason, and that's Burrow and Brady. I mean, like, other, Hall of Fame superstar, we could talk all day about this, but I'm not blaming the NFL. There's no way around it, but I think quarterbacks are too important. I mean, I really do, and it really hits home. And this example could go for so many teams, but that's why I bring up the Steelers stuff a lot. You can't imagine how many times I've been asked the last couple days, well, what can the Steelers do to compete with the top teams in the AFC? They always get in the playoffs and they get knocked off. I'm like, well, they lost in Baltimore. The year before that, they lost in Buffalo. The year before that, they lost in Kansas City and got blown out all 3 times. I'm like, well, find your Lamar, Allen, or Mahomes, and you'll be fine. But they don't. There's those 3 in Burrow to me. I think there's 4 superheroes on the planet. And I would probably much rather have the Steelers roster than the Bengals, especially defensively. But if you give me Burrow and nothing else, I at least think they have a chance to get back to against the Chiefs because they got the piece you can't find.
I get where they're coming from. And in the AFC, look around. Patrick Mahomes with a pretty good but not great Chiefs roster. It's not the best Chiefs team of his career by a long shot. In fact, it might be the worst team of his career. Lamar Jackson and doesn't have a real number 1 receiver. And the defense had some issues half the season. That's not an all-time Ravens roster. The Bills with Josh Allen, they traded. You move on from Stephon Diggs and you get better because you have Josh Allen and you have the rest. But look at what's happening in the NFC. Last year's NFC winner was the 49ers. Brock Purdy, an okay to fine to maybe even good quarterback. Not an elite quarterback, but good. And an elite roster. And they were this close to beating the Chiefs. The Eagles, 2 years ago with Jalen Hurts, who is an okay quarterback, a solid quarterback, not an elite quarterback, but a really good roster. They were this close to beating Patrick Mahomes. Now, if the standard is beating Patrick Mahomes, yeah, okay, I get it. But that Eagles team was really good. That 49ers team last year was really, really good. And look at the top 2 teams in the NFC this year. It's Jared Goff. He's a good quarterback. He's not an elite one. He's not in the Burrow, Allen, Lamar conversation, not by a long shot. But it's one of the best rosters top to bottom with the best, I think, the best coaching staff top to bottom in the NFL. They're probably going to the Super Bowl. And if they're not, it's probably going to be the Eagles, who I think have the best roster maybe in the NFL. And with Vic Fangio, with Kellen Moore, I don't know about Nick Sirianni, but those coordinators, it's a very well coached team too. I think the Lions or the Eagles have every opportunity to beat a Bills team or a Ravens team or a Chiefs team that this year have had their own struggles. I think the quickest way to having a good team, a great team, is having a good offense. And the easiest way to have a good offense is to have a great quarterback. I get all of that. But I look at these organizations over the last 5 years, especially in the NFC, and I go, if you can have a great team, a fine to good quarterback is probably good enough, at least to get you to the Super Bowl. Then can you beat the aliens over in the AFC? Maybe not. And finally, Tom Brady is in this announcing thing for the long haul. Brady's agent, Don Yee, told the Sports Business Journal on Thursday that Brady plans to honor his 10-year contract with Fox. Now, there are some questions. If Brady can do the job of commentating and be a partial owner of the Raiders, especially if he's going to have as strong a hand in what's happening in Las Vegas as he seems to have. But the NFL owners approved his purchase of a limited stake in the Raiders more than 2 years after he agreed to work with Fox. Now, luckily for us, we also know that NFL owners never make a mistake and always freely admit when they do. So I guess it's just going to be Tom Brady for the foreseeable future until he feels like not doing it. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, will Patrick Mahomes make yet another AFC Championship game? So at least until tomorrow, stay Locked On Sports Today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.